Hello and welcome on in, everybody. Today I've got a featured build from the one and only VexxPK. He's recently moved to PCNA and he is sharing with us one hell of a Dragonknight build. This thing has insane amounts of durability, insane amounts of healing power. It hits super hard and it's just all around a fantastic brawler. And it's even resistant to ganks. I mean, it doesn't get much better than this if you want to play an up in your face Dragonknight build. And I've got a link down below to Vex's channel. If you guys haven't checked him out, he's been playing Dragonknight for a very long time. He's been making YouTube videos for a very long time. So if you want to see more gameplay and more builds from him, be sure to check out Vex's channel. And of course, there is a written guide to this build on my website, KristoferESO.com. There's a bunch of gameplay at the end of the video too. And finally, this video is sponsored by ExpressVPN. Browse your favorite sites safely and unrestricted anywhere while hiding your IP address from potential threats. You can use ExpressVPN on all your devices with servers in 94 countries and lightning fast speeds. And you can get up to 3 months for free with my exclusive link down below. And I'm on a bit of a holiday right now, but I'm trying to get some work done for you guys, so excuse the weird audio transitions that you're about to hear.
Alright guys, let's take a look at that build. Starting off, Vex is an Imperial on this Dragonknight. Imperial, a great all-around choice for a build like this, but any stamina race could work here. Imperial is really nice because it does get the sustain, the max health, and the max stamina, which is really good all around for PvP. Taking a look at the max stat, Vex is sitting at around 30k health, 26k-ish stamina, 15k magicka. Pretty good for PvP. Having that 30k value, always really nice. And a little bit more stat on the shield bar, as he does have the tri-stat glyph on his shield. And then when we buff up and take a peek at the resists, he's got 1148 magicka recovery, very little health recovery as he is a vampire, and then 2.2k stamina recovery, so a pretty good amount of sustain, especially for something like a Dragonknight, which gets a lot of resource back from poisoning its targets and of course using ultimates. And then the weapon damage on this build, I'll buff it up for you guys as well. He's sitting at about 4.6k with his out of combat buffs, and then in combat this build has just shy of 5.8k weapon damage, with the 29% crit, which is not bad at all. And then taking a look at the penetration, he's got 7.2k physical penetration, and he does have major breach on this build, bringing it up to about 13k penetration. And then this build does have access to minor vulnerability, something worth mentioning for outgoing damage as well. But this build focuses a lot on stacking weapon damage. Dragonknight in general benefits a lot from stacking weapon damage, not only for the minor brutality that it gets, but if you go into the corrosive ultimate, you're fully penetrating your opponent's armor anyway. And then taking a look at the resists on this build, fully buffed, he's got 27.4k physical and spell resist with both the major and minor armor buffs. And then on top of it, Vex is running Bloodspawn, which brings this build up to around 31 to 32k physical spell resist, which is awesome for PvP. And then he's got 2.1k crit resist, which is a pretty good value as well, especially for a medium armor build. Then taking a look at his buffs here, Vampire Stage 3, this is of course for that massive amount of reduced damage from Undeath as a Stage 3 Vampire. And then he's got the Serpent Mundus for the stamina sustain that it provides as well. And then when we take a look at the consumables he's running, the first one he has is of course the Orzorga's Smoked Bear Haunch, max health and all 3 recoveries, very good for PvP. If you want a budget option, you can always go with the Jewels of Misrule here instead, as it doesn't give health recovery and this build is a vampire anyway. And then for the potion, he's running the Crown Tri-Stat Restoration Potion. This build has all the buffs covered in it already, so just the sustain from this is the way to go. And now let's take a look at the equipment he's got. Starting off with the first set, we talked a little bit about it, Bloodspawn. This is great for the ultimate that it generates. Of course, being on a Dragonknight, you want to generate as much ultimate as possible. And then you get that additional armor when you generate ultimate as well. And it's going to give a little bit of stamina recovery on top, so just a good set all around for Dragonknight. And then he's got a single piece of the trainee for the additional health that it provides. And then the next set that he has is the Scavenging Demise 5-piece. And this is going to be the big damage set that he's running on this build. The 2-3-4 piece, great for outgoing damage. And then the 5 piece, when you deal critical poison damage, you summon the Maw. It will deal almost 11k damage unbuffed. Vex said it has about a 20k tooltip fully buffed on this build. And then you get the minor vulnerability on the target as well for just additional pressure against them. Now this effect is on a 10-second cooldown, and it can only be triggered by landing a crit with poison. But this build has a ton of access to different kinds of poison damage. The poison on the back bar can proc it, the poison from Noxious Breath can proc it as well. So this build will have an easy time proccing this set whenever it's on the front bar. And then the next set that he has is a 5-piece Daedric Trickery, giving some max stat in the 2-3-4 piece, and then of course giving you a random major buff for 21 seconds on a 9-second cooldown whenever you deal damage while you're in combat. So throughout the course of a fight, you can expect to have pretty good uptime on these buffs. But the big one to mention is, of course, the major heroism here. Pairing that with Bloodspawn, it just gives this build even more ultimate generation, which is a huge deal for a Dragon Knight. And the Vitality and Mending are definitely something that are not overlooked on this build either. And then the final set he has is the Sea Serpent's Coil. Big damage reduction if you're at full health on the initial hit, which is great for surviving incoming ganks. And then on top of it, when you get hit, you will snare yourself with the Serpent's Rebuke, but it grants Major Berserk and Major Courage for 10 seconds. These are massive buffs for PvP. This is going to be a huge amount of increased outgoing damage and a pretty decent amount of increased healing thanks to the Courage. And then taking a look at the traits on all of his equipment here, we'll start off on the Sword and Shield bar. It's got Reinforced on the shield with a Powered Sword, and the Powered Sword on the back bar because this is the primary healing bar of the build, so this is just going to increase the healing power of the build further. And that ties into the poison that he's using on the sword, which will not only deal damage over time, but restore health to you as you deal damage over time with it. And these poisons can, of course, proc the Scavenging Demise set as well. And then on the shield, he also has the Tri-Stat Hacky Joe glyph here. Moving on to the Maul, he's got Sharpened with the weapon spell damage enchant. Sharpened, a fantastic option for increasing your damage in PvP. Now, something worth mentioning here is that this is a Dragon Knight with corrosive armor on the back bar, so you could go for a Greatsword instead of the Maul, just to favor the increased weapon damage, and you'll have even more power when you're in the corrosive. You could even go for a Nirnhoned Greatsword if you really wanted to, but in general, you're not going to have corrosive armor up all the time, and this will be the better damage option versus the two. And then for the jewelry, he's got Swift on 2 pieces and Infused on 1, every one of them with the weapon damage enchant on it. Definitely what you want on a Dragon Knight who has the Minor Brutality buff. And then for the gear, he's got the full set of Tri-Stat Hacky Joe glyphs. This is really nice for PvP, but if you can't afford these glyphs, you could just go with a mix of stamina and health glyphs instead. And then he's got 5 pieces of Reinforced. On the larger pieces of armor is where you definitely want to have the Reinforced, just to push that armor value that you get. And then on the smaller pieces of armor, he has got 1 piece of Sturdy and then 1 piece of Impenetrable. And this is, of course, a 5-piece medium and 2-piece heavy build. So let's take a look at the skills he's running, starting off on the Greatsword bar. The first ability he has is Executioner. You guys know what this is for, finishing off a target who's close to dying. The next skill that he has is Noxious Breath. This is great not only for the AoE damage and dot that it puts on the opponent, but it applies Major Breach, and of course, if it crits or any of the dots crit, it will proc the Scavenging Demise set. The next skill that he has is Rally. This is here for the buffs that it provides. Major Brutality, very important for a weapon damage based build. Minor Endurance, great for that stamina recovery. And of course, this is access to a bit of a burst heal when you use it as well. And then the next ability he has is Dizzying Swing. This is the primary spammable for the build once you have your opponent dotted up. Not only will it deal a pretty beefy amount of damage when you use it, but it'll set the opponent off balance, which allows you to hit them with a stun with either a partial charged heavy or just following it up with another Dizzy Swing, because the second one will stun them. And you can also snare them if they are immune to off balance. So just a really good all-around offensive move. And then the next skill he has is Flames of Oblivion. This is going to be nice damage over time, again, from the Fireball every 5 seconds or so. But on top of it, this also gives the Major Prophecy and Savagery buffs, which is great for outgoing damage on this build. And then for the ultimate on his front bar, he has Take Flight as the burst damage ultimate of choice. This is going to deal a beefy amount of damage, and it is a gap closer as well as an ultimate, while simultaneously stunning everybody that it hits. The fact that it's a gap closer is a pretty big deal because the Serpent's Rebuke does snare you pretty hard, so having an ultimate that can get you back on top of the opponent being a gap closer, very important. And then taking a look at the Sword and Shield bar, the first ability he has is Coagulating Blood. This is going to be the primary burst heal for the build. Big fat, almost 11k tooltip on it, and then 50% additional healing based on the missing health. You also gain major fortitude from using this skill, but seeing as he is a vampire, this isn't the biggest effect on the build, and we also get the major fortitude buff from the potion too. And then the next ability he has is Cinderstorm. This is a very powerful AoE snare slash heal over time, especially on a build like this that is on the slow side thanks to the Serpent's Rebuke. This gives Dragonknight an incredible ability just to tank that little area. And a 70% snare is super harsh, so that's going to have a huge impact on opponents that step inside of it. The next skill that he has is Volatile Armor. This, of course, is access to the major armor buff. On top of it, it's going to be a bit of an AoE damage over time, and there is some reflected flame damage whenever a melee attacker hits you with a direct damage attack. And then the next skill he has is Elude. Access to major evasion to reduce the incoming AoE damage. And of course, if you have Elude up and you get hit by an opponent's AoE, it will give you major expedition for 5 seconds, thanks to the 5 pieces of medium armor this build has on. Now, Vex does mention that this is kind of the flex spot of the build. If you wanted, you could run something else here. He does recommend something like Venomous Claw if you want to be a little bit more on the offensive side, or even going for the one hand and shield power bash for that stun and the damage that it deals. And even Shield Charge is an option if you want to have a stun plus a gap closer. And then the last skill he has here is Resolving Vigor, a very strong heal over time. On top of it, it's going to give the minor resolve buff for even more armor. And then last but not least, the ultimate on the back bar is Corrosive Armor. It's going to let you ignore all of your opponent's resists, deal a pretty decent amount of damage over time to anybody who's next to you, and of course limit the amount of damage that your opponent can do to you with a single attack to 3% of your max health. So it makes this build very tanky, and with all the healing this build has in Corrosive Armor, it's very hard to go down even if a lot of opponents are attacking you. Now, taking a look at the champion points that he's got, of course you want to put in all the applicable passives that you can in your champion tree, and taking a look at the stars that he's chosen. The first one here is Ironclad, 6% damage reduction from direct damage attacks, fantastic for PvP. And then he's got Exploiter for that 10% additional damage against an off-balance opponent. Very easy access to off-balance with the 2H Dizzy Swing, so this is going to be great for outgoing damage, the best damage option that you could pretty much choose. And then he's got Master at Arms for that 6% additional damage done with direct damage attacks. And last but not least, Resilience for that 660 critical resist that it gives. And then moving on to the red tree, again, you want to put in all those passives that you can. And then the stars that he's chosen, the first one here is Sustained by Suffering, giving you 150 of each recovery while you're under the effect of a negative effect. This works really well on this setup, especially in PvP, because this build does not have a purge, and in PvP you are almost always going to have a negative effect on you while you're in combat, so this is going to be a lot of additional sustain. And then Pain's Refuge, reduce damage taken by 2% for every 2 negative effects active on you, up to a maximum of 20%. Again, lots of negative effects and no purge, so this is going to be a fantastic star to take. And then he's got Survival Instincts. While affected by a status effect, your core combat skills cost 5% less per stage, and that's going to be things like rolling and blocking. And again, this build doesn't have a purge, so a really good choice for it. And last but not least, that 10% movement speed from Celerity. Movement is, of course, very important in PvP. And there you go, guys. That is the build.
So let's see the build in action. The first fight that Vex has for us today, outside of Draclo, he gets knocked off his horse by this enemy warden, and there's a few yellow in the keep, and they decide to jump down and fight as well. And there you can see Vex's Serpent Rebuke is going to proc, and he just sets all his buffs down. And he puts the Ash Cloud in a bit of a choke, so if he decides to retreat through it, he forces the enemy players to go for the snare, and then he dots everybody up with the debuff, goes for the leap on top of the enemy in the back that's healing everybody, and Vex just trying to put the damage in afterwards with his Dizzy Swing, and one of the opponents goes into his Vampire ultimate, and Vex is just kind of forced to retreat, and there you see that Ash Cloud positioning coming in very handy. And he sets down a fresh Ash Cloud by the pillar, and then right away turns to the bow player in the back, gets him with a nice stun off the Dizzy Swing, goes for the leap to follow it up, but he ends up eating a lot of damage from that enemy ultimate, and a lot of healing power coming in from this group, and Vex is just forced to retreat. Great placement of that next Ash Cloud, kind of forcing everybody to run through it. Throws the breath down, goes again for that off-balance stun, and still the healing power from this group is quite a bit, and Vex still getting hammered pretty good here, but he's just continuing to try to keep that pressure up there. He lands the off-balance on the Archer again, goes for the stun with the leap, managing to get pretty good damage into him, but the enemy players healing up in time, and Vex himself taking quite a lot of damage from that. And then he retreats back through the pillars here. Great positioning again with that Ash Cloud. This is such an important skill for Dragonknight. So much healing power, that really strong snare, and Vex is able to tank out that damage, very quickly heal up, and again, a Ash Cloud right on the entrance there. Everybody walks through that snare, and Vex gets a great setup, goes for the leap, and a couple executes, manages to take down the yellow player before he can get to the heals. And then Vex himself taking a lot of damage. He sets the Ash Cloud down to try to heal up, but he sees the enemy player trying to go for the res, and Vex actually just goes for it. He gets the bash the first time, managing to heal up again, goes for the second bash. There's the third bash, and he's got the leap ready, throws it down. He hits everybody with it, and he starts trying to put the damage into those players, but still a lot of pressure coming from this group. And I think the body on the ground there ended up respawning, giving up on trying to get the res, and Vex's tenacity definitely paying off. He gets a good off-balance stun on this player there, catching him off guard, and there's the execute, very quick kill, and then he throws down the Ash Cloud, and again, this enemy warden tries to go for the res, but the yellow player actually respawning before the res can even complete. It did look like Vex was going to get the bash successfully there as well, and he turns around and gets good damage in on this guy. Unfortunately, lots of healing coming in again, and Vex taking a lot of pressure. Great place for that Ash Cloud. Just going to force everybody to run through this doorway under the heavy snare, and Vex is just getting hammered. Something that this clip here really highlights is the healing power that this build has. I think Dragonknight in general has some of the best healing power for solo heals in the game, but this build, man, his health just shoots right back up. And it's going to help a lot because it'll constantly proc his Serpent's Rebuke when he gets back up to full health. These guys are still putting a ton of pressure. Vex, again, getting into a good position, setting down the Ash Cloud, and then he gets behind the group, dots everybody up, and tries to go for the offensive combo there. Unfortunately, he's unable to, but he's got the corrosive armor ready, jumps into corrosive, throws the breath down, and now he's going to start feeding these guys dizzy swings. Very tanky while in this corrosive, managing to completely pierce that guy's armor, and gets a very quick kill off the dizzy combo. And then he sets down a fresh Ash Cloud and then goes for the healer in the back. He dots him up, got the leap ready already, the ultimate generation of this build. Oh my god, so good. And he manages to pick up a kill on that healer there, and then he throws down the Ash Cloud and just kind of hugs the side of the wall just to LOS the ranged attacks, forcing everybody again into that heavy snare, and he just keeps dotting everybody up. The Templar hitting him with this spear, and Vex throwing down that Ash Cloud. The healing power is just something else. And he throws the dots on everybody. The enemy players, though, just kind of flexing that they have the heals. It looks like as they die, they're just respawning and running back out as well. And Vex tries to go for the combo on the healer, again getting caught by a lot of damage, and the Templar stun coming in. And Vex just flexing that mobility when he doesn't have the Serpent's Rebuke on. And then he gets a little bit too aggressive at the end, trying to take down the player who sets up siege. But a great fight, and unfortunately, the enemy player is just respawning a lot there, so he's unable to take everybody down. Moving on to the next clip, there's a nice leap into the execute. Vex takes one player down, and then he quickly retreats back behind the rock here and heals himself up. And it looks like the dot is going to proc his Serpent's Rebuke as well. But Vex is just going to be patient, not charge back into that siege. He's got the wall there to kind of absorb the siege damage. A great leap, helping out that friendly Necromancer, and then Vex himself taking a lot of pressure. And you can see he quickly swaps to Sword and Shield, and he uses a combination of dodge roll and block to stay alive there. Sword and Shield giving you great defensive options with that block. And the enemy players just keeping a lot of pressure on him. Great defensive leap on that guy as he comes around the corner in his ultimate. And then Vex, again, just showing off that mobility when the Serpent's Rebuke is not up. Very quickly sprinting behind some cover here. And the two enemy players come following him. One drops the Meteor. The Archer trying to put some damage in as well. and Vex is going to get back behind the rock and just use it as best he can to LOS these ranged attacks. And the enemy Sork here keeping a lot of pressure on him, unfortunately. And Vex gets a great leap there, managing to get good damage into the Stam Sork. He does catch him with the off balance, but again, he's taken a lot of range damage, so he's forced to use his terrain. Great placement of that Ash Cloud, though. He is able to very quickly heal up with it and catches that guy with that nasty snare. But the yellow player is slowly converging on him here, and Vex just keeping a lot of pressure down. He eats the leap from the enemy Dragonknight. I actually think he might have blocked that, and he unfortunately got stunned by the Sork, but there's Vex's leap. He tries to go for the execute, and there you see that healing power on Dragonknight right now. The enemy player very quickly healing up, and Vex just turns around, seeing this Sork actually very low on health. He dots him up to try to put the pressure in, but the enemy Sork goes for a few streaks, managing to heal up a little bit more, but Vex is just chewing through his damage shields, and he's got the leap ready. Fantastic connection, stunning both players, and he takes down the Sork, and then right away turns onto the Dragonknight, starts feeding him the dots, and just resets his buffs real quick in his Ash Cloud. And then there are the dizzy swings. He does catch the off balance. He goes for the a few more D swings here. He hasn't hit that stun yet, though. And there is going to be, yeah, lots of healing from that Dragonknight. Unfortunately, Vex unable to capitalize on that combo, but he doesn't waste his ultimate. Instead, he's just patient. And it looks like he is almost at the point of having that corrosive armor up as well. More yellow players coming out of the keep. It looks like he's getting blasted from up top as well. And Vex does catch the stun there with the off balance. Lots of damage off that combo. There is the Scavenging Demise coming in as well. Really good timing on that. And Vex gets the execute to finish him off. And then he starts working on this Sork that I think had respawned and come back out. And he just keeps feeding him the dots. The Sork player getting caught with the stun as he tries to escape. And then look at this leap. Oh, man. A huge connection, and he takes him down. And one last clip here as we say goodbye. This clip here, I think, just showcasing that durability that this build has. Absolutely incredible amounts of healing power and just the burst that it can turn around and throw down as well. A huge thank you to Vex for sending in this build to be featured. If you guys haven't checked out this guy's channel, he's got tons of footage of his various Dragonknight builds that he's played, and of course some footage from other builds and lots of build videos. So an excellent ESO content creator. He's been doing it for quite some time, and he very recently came to PCNA. So it's great to have him on the PC servers. And of course, there are links to his channel down in the description. I implore you guys to give him a look. If you have a build that you want to see featured, or if you have a clip that you want to see in an ESO top 5, you can send that to kristofereso@hotmail.com. I've got written guides to this build and so many more on my website, kristofereso.com. And of course, if you want to keep up to date with me, you can give me a follow on Twitter. And I'll be streaming again soon, so if you guys want to catch me live, give me a follow on Twitch as well. And feel free to check out the show's sponsor, ExpressVPN. Browse your favorite sites safely and unrestricted anywhere while hiding your IP address from potential threats. You can use ExpressVPN on all of your devices with servers in 94 countries and lightning fast speeds. And you can get up to 3 months for free if you use my promo link down in the description below. If you guys love the show and you want to help support it, you can always become a channel member. And of course, a massive thank you to all of my patrons on Patreon for supporting the show. Be sure to check Vex's channel out if you guys haven't already. And as always, have a great night, everybody, and I'll see you next time.